Greetings, brothers. Today we're going to talk about both Secondaries and all the new missions in Chapter Approved 2022. I'm going to tell you Secondaries I pick, why and why I don't pick them, and also how I would play each of the new missions, and also what's important to note with like the primary plus. So, Chapter Approved 2022 is out, and I really want to touch on all the secondaries and the missions, and there's a lot to get through, so let's make a start. Blood Angels friendly secondaries, and this is looking at the core book, and also the Blood Angels Codex, and also the Space Marine Codex. So these are secondaries that I think are reasonably friendly and decent for us to do right now if I had to narrow it down. Engage on all fronts is much harder to do now and requires units of 3 or vehicles. It's still a good scoring secondary. Behind enemy lines or Relentless Assault also are kind of map dependent and your army list dependent, but again it's a solid good scoring secondary. No prisoners is worth more points now, so against infantry heavy armies like Necrons for example, no prisoners is a more viable pick than it was before, and Bring It Down is also better versus vehicle heavy lists, so again a viable pick. Assassination I would bring in any battle that your opponent has 3 or more characters. You could even take it if they had 3, but more than 3, then there's 13 points on the table and it's very attractive. Titan Slayer, bring if your opponent has 3 Titans. If it has just 2, consider Bring It Down. With the changes to Bring It Down, high wound vehicles, or monsters I guess, which are typically also Titans, could actually score you more points from Bring It Down. Retrieve Nachmund data is certainly harder to do now. It really requires a unit of troops with 5 man to perform it 100% of the time. It has a 66% chance to be performed with servitors. Something that I'm going to maybe look at in the near future is Void's Men at Arms. This is a cheap unit that Space Marines could make use of to complete Nachmund data, and I still think Nachmund data is strong. It is one that can be completed pretty reliably if you're running Phobos units, so I haven't given up on Nachmund data. I kind of still like it. Raise the Banners High is definitely viable on 6 objective maps, sometimes on 5, but definitely on 6. Deployed Teleport Homers has a solid improvement now in that you can kind of synergize it with Behind Enemy Lines and Relentless Assault, and you don't always need to be in the opponent's deployment zone to do it, and if you're doing it with troops, you're actually going to complete the action within your turn, so Deployed Teleport Homers got a bit better. We don't see it often, but it could be something we could use. Oath of Moment I find is always a good secondary for Space Marines. It always guarantees like 8 to 10 points, even in the toughest of games. And Abhor the Witch, I guess you would pick against psychic heavily armies, typically Thousand Suns and Grey Knights. Death from Above, if you need to reserve a ton of your army or put them in deep strike, then it could be good for a solid 10 points, because as you arrive every turn, you can get a few points. 2 if you kill an enemy unit, 3 if you kill characters. You would need to take a drop bod here to get the maximum 15, but I think Death from Above could be used kind of like in the recent games I've played against like Tau and Custodes, where I've really had to keep a lot of my army off the board because otherwise it's just going to be deleted. Death from Above could be one that you can kind of pull out the hat for that. Now let's talk about secondaries I avoid, and there's a lot that I do avoid. I avoid Stranglehold. A lot of people like Stranglehold, but I don't like leaving my units out in the open as a Blood Angels player. Our units aren't durable, and I don't like secondaries that my opponent can focus on denying me scoring. So Stranglehold is one that a lot of people take. I don't take it. To the Last, I never take. I don't think our units are durable enough. Typically our big units, they're going to want to be in melee, they can get surrounded, they can get killed. You lose the points. Grind Them Down, again, strategic play can actually deny this. You know, your opponent could end up killing like one single intercessor or something if it means that they make it one more model for you to kill and then deny you points. I don't like Grind Them Down either. Investigate Signals. I feel like Investigate Signals on paper sounds like it would be good with Oath of Moment because you need to have units in the middle, but the middle of the battlefield is usually quite contested. So I think if you've got units in the middle, you're probably going to need them to be fighting. I'm not sure you're going to have them available to do Investigate Signals. So again, I don't take it. Psychic Interrogation could be better now with a cheap Psyker, but obviously it can be denied. Warp Ritual and Pierce the Veil, obviously, again, could be done with a cheap Psyker. I think the cheapest Psyker you're probably going to get is an Inquisitor that could join the Blood Angels army, but I don't really see anyone running these. And again, they can be denied by your opponent, so there's a question mark around those. Blade of Sanguinius, you have to kill your opponent's warlord, or I think it's not their warlord, it's a character that they nominate before the battle. I think the opponent could screen this character, they could even run away, they could put it on a flying character, it's just too risky to get the points. And Fury of the Lost is the secondary that we never see again, and you need to be killing units with Death Company every turn, essentially, and you would need to probably make 3 units of Death Company to make this work. I don't run any Death Company, so it's useless for me, but maybe in the change of Death Company being a little bit cheaper, we could see some people take Fury of the Lost. So, with all those secondaries talked about, and please use these slides to help you if you're preparing for GT or any game, maybe you need to make a version of this for you, you know, including the ones you like and the ones you dislike, so you've kind of narrowed it down, you know? Let's talk about mission 11 first then, for Recover the Relics, and this is one of the new ones. So you get 1 CP, you only get your Battleforge CP if you control 1 in No Man's Land, but you get an additional CP if you control the objective in your opponent's deployment zone. If we are player A, then essentially you've got 1 in each deployment zone and 2 on each side of No Man's Land. Most of the maps now have this little player A territory, player B territory, and that is going to be important for some of the primary pluses, which we're going to talk about. The primary plus is what I'm calling the additional component of the primary. So before it used to be like 5, 10, 15 for holding primaries, now it's 4, 8, 12, and you're able to get points in primary plus. In the Recover the Relics, you're essentially just getting points for killing the enemy, and it caps at 3 per turn for each unit of the enemy kill. So it's a 6 objective map. So, and a couple of these objectives are very close to your deployment zone, just 4 inches away, so you can easily get onto these in turn 1, raise banners, or potentially stranglehold if you're that way inclined. Now, if I'm playing a map like this, typically probably what I do is I focus on one flank, if I can, without making it too obvious that I'm going to focus on one flank. Now, we have a big advantage there, because Blood Angel's units jump pretty far, so it is possible to set up your army where it looks like you're going to contest both flanks, and then go hard on one flank. And I guess also think about firing lines. You know, firing lines if you've got dreadnoughts or anything like that, or firing lines you need to avoid if the enemy, like, is Tau, for example, and you don't have that much shooting. There's no middle objective in this map, so Oath of Moment could be a bit weaker, and behind enemy lines / Relentless Assault, for potentially getting additional CP, there's a lot of space in this deployment zone, and all the objectives are out with the deployment zone, so if the opponent isn't going to be great at screening, then behind enemy lines, Relentless Assault actually sounds quite good on this one. If you're getting any value out of today's video, I would love it if you could hit the like button so this video can share to other Blood Angels fans. Now, tear down their icons. This is mission 12. Standard CP rules, control 1, control 2, control more. In this one, you basically set up bombs in your opponent's territory. So each time you set up a bomb in your opponent's territory, it needs to be 9 inches away from any other bomb that you have set up. If it's done by an OBSEC unit, it completes at the end of your turn, otherwise it completes at the beginning of your next turn. And then at the end of the game, you're going to get 4 points for each bomb that you have set up. The opponent can use their models to disarm the bombs if they end up within 3 of them, so it can kind of be a little bit like a game of chess where you're pushing forward to set up some bombs, but you need to hold some units back. It's quite a fun one. I've played this one once, and I very much enjoyed it. Retrieve Nachmund data might actually be weaker in this one, because if your units are focusing on setting up bombs, then maybe you're not able to perform as many Nachmund datas. A strong one for Oath of Moment, again, there's a center objective. Some people will like Stranglehold, and Relentless Assault could essentially synergize here with the primary plus, because if you need to be in the opponent's deployment zone attacking their home base, you could also have some units there that are just setting up multiple bombs. Now, the bombs need to be set up 3 inches away from your unit, so if you assume that a unit can move 6 inches, like a Space Marine unit, you can essentially set up a bomb, put the bomb, let's say, put to the north of the map, 3 inches away from your unit, move 6 inches south, now you're 9 inches away from the previous bomb. You can then set up a bomb that needs to be within 3, so you could just put it 1 inch below. So basically every turn, any unit that is in the opponent's territory can basically set up a bomb, then move, then set up another one. So, you know, if you manage to hide like a unit of servitors or something down here, they could set up a bomb, move, set up another bomb, move, set up another bomb. Good way to get points. Strategic reserve in this map could be pretty strong. Now, let's move on to Data Scry-Salvage, and this one has basically 4 objectives right through the middle and 1 in each player's deployment zone. This is a control 2, 3 more, And once you control the objective, if you controlled it with an OBSEC unit, you can then move off and it's still your objective, assuming that the enemies don't come on and take it back from you. What's the primary plus? Well, you perform the action in your own deployment zone, and for every objective you hold in no man's land, you're going to get a point up to a maximum of 3. So again, my thought here would be to focus on a flank at the moment. You need a unit that's performing actions in your deployment zone, and you need to hold probably 2 on the flanks to get any number of decent points from the primary plus. Relentless Assault could synergize with essentially denying your opponent primary plus if you're going to come in here and fight for the backfield and take them off it, stop them performing the action. Again, I would try and focus on one flank, maybe without being too obvious that I'm going to focus on one flank. If you had an OBSEC unit, like Infiltrators or Incursors, that you can conceal positions, deploy forward and tag some of these so that they're yours earlier in the game, and obviously you can then move off them, that would be pretty good. I'd probably only aim for 10 points on the primary plus. Like, I feel like the primary plus in this one could be a little bit of a trap. Like, you're going to spread yourself super thin. These 2 objectives are 24 inches apart, and they are the closest 2, right? So you've got 2 on each side, 12 inches apart, and then 2 24 inches apart. That's a long way to be apart, especially, you know, if your jump units are going to take 2 turns to cover that distance. Could be a bit of a trap. You need to be wise on this one. And then I think there's plenty of room for Nachmund data around the objectives. I think there's also potential Raise the Banner synergy with the primary plus. So this one is interesting. Control 2, Control 3, and OBSEC are going to be really important to winning this map. Let's move on to Abandoned Structures. 5 objective map. No pre-game move into no man's land. So if you've got Death Company or anything like that, just be aware you cannot pre-game move into no man's land. You can pre-game move around in your own deployment zone, but how much that helps you is really dependent. Control 1, Control 2, Control more. Hold the middle or kill a unit within 6 of the middle each turn to gain 2 points from the primary plus, and hold the middle at the end of the battle for 5 points. So what that tells me is basically player 2, or the player that's going second, potentially has an advantage here because there's going to be more chance that he can hold the middle at the end of the game. And then I guess the question is, how much do you rate the middle? Because there's 10 points to be got by holding or killing unit within 6 of the middle for the primary plus. And then those 5 bonus at the end. Typically the primary pluses give somewhere around 10 or 15 points, it seems like. Now, again, usually when you talk about holding the middle, that'd be strong for Oath of Moment. This one actually might be strong for Stranglehold or Investigate Signals, depending if you're that way inclined. Obviously, I talked about them that I don't take them. But it does sound like this is going to be a bloodbath for the middle. So if you feel confident that you can make the middle yours, then maybe you want to just double down on that. Again, I'm probably picking a flank if I'm playing this, maybe going weak on one flank, strong on the other flank, and then coming in to try and take the middle. And Death from Above is the one that I picked out here that could actually synergize with the need to basically fight every single turn and kill units every single turn. Obviously, if you pick from Death from Above because it's from the Space Marine Codex, then you can't take one from the Blood Angels Codex, you can't take one from the Space Marine Codex, but could be another option if you don't feel super confident about continuing to hold the middle. Let's talk about conversion then. And it's 1 CP if your Warlord is on the battlefield. He can be in a transport, but your Warlord needs to be on the battlefield if you want to gain your CP. So if you lose your Warlord in this battle, you've lost your CP generation. Control 1, Control 2. Primary plus is 4 for holding your opponent's deployment zone objective, 2 for holding either in no man's land, and -1 if you don't control your own. So again, Oath of Moment friendly in that it's got another center one. Deployment zones here are really only 18 inches apart from the long edge to the long edge. If you took this short edge to this short edge, from this corner here to this corner here, you're only talking like 12 inches. Doing some Pythagoras, this is 9 inches, this is 9 inches, so this is like 12.7 inches. So deployment zones in these corner ones, like this, if you were to place a unit of Death Company here, you wouldn't even need to Forlorn Fury. A 12-inch move will literally put you 0.7 of an inch away from this corner here. So something interesting to note, if you want to go aggressive, these are the maps to go aggressive. You're going to be into your opponent's deployment zone in turn 1 with any jump pack unit. If you're running Wrath of Baal, you're in there. Just deploy your units on the corners here and go for the opposite corners as opposed to jumping across the entire circle. Relentless Assault, engage on all fronts, could potentially synergize with your primary plus here. Engage on all fronts in that you're needing to control these ones. I guess Nachmund data as well, you're needing to control the board quadrants. And yeah, again, typically I don't go super offensive / ham, whatever you want to call it. I would focus on flanks and then probably try and hold the middle and push out from there. But If you are a very offensive player and that's the way you like to use, and you maybe got a Sanguinary Priest to get you an Assault Doctor in early, that is a tactic you could use to really put pressure on your opponent. Next up, Scouring. And Scouring is interesting because every single objective is out with the deployment zones. They're all in no man's land here. Basically, what you do in Scouring is you scan each objective. It is a unit action, and each time you scan an objective, you've essentially scanned it. You've got 3 points. You need to move on to another objective. It's control 1, control 2, control more again. Oath of Moment comes to mind because you've got that center one. It rewards mobility across the battlefield here, right? Requiring actions on multiple objectives. But in doing that, it kind of sometimes hinders your ability to do other actions, like Nachmund data, unless you've really got your list built around being able to do a lot of actions. That's something you would have to consider. There is an edge play on this map that we haven't thought about much, and it is that you could essentially take Line Breaker, Relentless Assault, and Teleport Homers, and that you could drop maybe like a Land Speeder Storm with a squad of scouts into the deployment zone. That would be 4 points. The scouts could perform Teleport Homers. That would essentially be 4 points. You could maybe have some Incursors infiltrate in. There's no reason for your opponent to be in the deployment zone, right? They're all out here for all the objectives. So if you thought, or if your army's designed that you got a few units that can get over here and just chill out in the deployment zone, this could actually be an interesting one that would kind of catch your opponent off guard. There's a lot of points you could score here with very few units. For example, a single unit of Incursors popping into the objective, maybe in turn 3, you start them on the map, you pay 1 CP to Guerrilla Tactics, you bring them in turn 3. In turn 3, a single unit of Incursors could score 4 points for Relentless Assault and Teleport Homers, and they could do that in turn 3, 4, and 5. So 1 unit of Incursors here could score you 12 points times 2, so 24 secondary points. That's very, very good. 24 out of a possible 30. You wouldn't need much else to cap out on those secondaries. And there, as I say, there's no reason for your opponent to be back here. So that's an interesting edge play for Blood Angels. But it is an edge play, but maybe some people's armies are set up to do something sneaky like that, so keep that in mind. Now, Tide of Conviction, and this is a new map I've played once, and it is 1 CP only if you control your own home field objective, and it is 2 in a strange sort of configuration in the middle in both sides of the no man's land, essentially the player's territories. Now, you're going to score points if you hold the ones in your opponent's no man's land. And that's going to be basically 2 per turn, and at the end of the game, it's going to be 2 for each of the 2 in no man's land, and 4 potentially for the one in their deployment zone. So basically you're talking 4 turns of 2 points, and then basically 8 points at the end. When the primary plus is giving so many points, like a potential 16, you don't actually need to get a whole heap of points from regular primaries at that point. But it will be difficult because it is a control 2, control 3, so you're kind of going to have to be on 3, but you're probably only going to have to be on 3 for like 2 or 3 turns, right? 3 turns on 3 objectives would give you 8, 16, 24 points, plus the potential 16 from primary plus for making that big swing at the end of the game or something. So I do like the primary plus. It's gonna make it better for armies that sometimes struggle to hold objectives. And this one here is essentially going to reward aggressive play into opponent's territory, which is something we can definitely be aggressive with all our jump pack units. Again, Relentless Assault to cut off their CP generation is an option. All fronts is going to be an option because of just where the objectives are, basically in all fronts. And banners, if you want to go defensive, banners could be a decent choice here because there's 3 that you could essentially be on in turn 1 and raise the banners. You're kind of having to pick a flank here, right? And the flank that seems more attractive to me is the flank where the one objective is way over on the left, right? And I guess if you're on this side, it would be this one. The one is near the edge of the board because you need to get onto one in opponent's territory, no man's land. If you pick the one in the middle, everything can be essentially shoot at it. They can probably all see it. So you're probably wanting to look for the one on the edge. If this one's in a defensible position with some cover, then that might be an ideal place to start. 12 inches forward. Essentially, that gives you a 6-inch charge onto this objective if the opponent are holding it to like do the same thing that we're talking about, pick up banners. This is an interesting map, and I've only played it once, but I kind of liked it, and I think it's just going to take a little bit of getting used to. Now, Death and Zeal, and I guess this one is a control 1, control 2, but you can move off the objectives again with OBSEC. It is going to be +2 or +3 points if you control another objective or all the objectives, or you destroy an opponent on an objective. So if you push an opponent off an objective, that's going to give you 2 points. If you control all the objectives, that's going to give you basically, you need to meet 2 of these criteria. So it's like hold all and destroy a unit, or push an opponent off and destroy a unit. So there's definitely points to be had on Primary Plus. Again, it's going to reward aggressive plays to flip objectives. It's going to be Oath of Moment friendly. Flanking and fast moving and deep strike options are definitely going to be your friend. And again, this one is the one with the very close deployment zones. And again, another interesting thing is if you lined up your models right here, and the opponent's going to have to go for one of the sides, right? So both of these objectives, this one here is 12 inches, and then it's basically you're talking 15 inches to here. So 12 to 15. So you would assume that your opponent's probably going to go for the one that's 12 away, right, from their own deployment zone, rather than push an extra 3 inches out. But if they do go for this, and you line up some models here, you have 12-inch jump forward, you essentially have a 3-inch charge onto the objective. With Blood Angels getting +1 to charge, that means a Snake Eyes is probably going to be the 3, so there's almost an unfailable charge. If you think your opponent's going to go in for the one that's 12 from their side, be it player A this one, or be it player B this one, then you can potentially, if you go second, there might actually be an advantage to go second. If you go first, you could maybe jump to a position here, hide behind some terrain, wait for your opponent to get on the objective, easy charge, right? So this one's actually quite interesting, and again, it's going to reward you for pushing your opponents off the objective. So if they did go first and they took this one, jumping on and pushing it off is actually going to be a big reward for you. Same as if they go middle. If they go middle in the side and you've got 2 good jump units positioned well, it could be a really good day for you. Now, let's talk about securing artifacts, and this is essentially priority target, where each player is going to get to reposition a couple of objectives. I believe it's an A and a B for each player. Now, the difference is previously you picked your own priority target within the one that's in your territory, so it would have been like you either picked this one or this one. I think you could actually pick any objective as your priority target. Now it is one of the 2 that begins in your territory. Only your opponent picks it for you. So there's no more grabbing this one, hiding it behind terrain, and then picking that and making an easy 15 points, right? So your opponent's likely going to try and move some of your objectives out into the open. You're probably going to do the same, and then you're going to pick the more open one or the less defensible one as your opponent's priority one. So Primary Plus in this map could be quite difficult to score. Possibly the best way of scoring this is going to be like a low-cost unit daisy chained onto them with some models in cover to try and get like a decent cover save. So that's something to be interested in. Control 1, Control 2, Control More, and again, center objective. A lot of the maps have center objectives. So Oath of Moment is actually, I mean, I run Oath a lot. At the last GT I was at, I run it in every single game, and Oath of Moment kind of just rewards you from playing the game, right? Because we don't really fall back, we don't really fail morale, we usually kill some enemy models, and then we're usually in the middle. So Oath of Moment, again, is a possibility here. I've already said I think that lack of cover could make the Primary Plus very difficult, and I guess there could be a bit of synergy here in that if you grab either this objective or this objective and put them somewhere where you think it's going to be difficult for the opponent to defend, and then you're going to bring in some of your deep strikers into their deployment zone, or I guess maybe even like flanking maneuver into their deployment zone, you could synergize a bit with Relentless Assault behind enemy lines. I know a lot of people like Relentless Assault and behind enemy lines probably more than me, and I'm more of an Oath of Moment player, but I think there's definitely play here around those 2 as well. And I guess that's all the maps. That was kind of a very quick fire video where we just went through everything. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a link to this presentation in the video description, so you are free to just download a copy for yourself to help you prepare for any match or tournament play. And I do think maybe it would be good for you guys, if you're struggling to win games, to think about some of the things I said in terms of how I approach the maps, and also maybe make a list of secondaries that you are quite comfortable with. You know, if you're super comfortable with a secondary, even if it isn't potentially the best map for it, maybe still take it, because, like, you know, you could maybe score more points just because you're super comfortable with it and you know how to score it. And I would also say, if you're ever going to a tournament, never play a secondary you've never played before. So if you haven't got practice on all the secondaries, then you need to get practice. I hope you found the video useful. I hope that kind of breaks down some of the new maps, answers some questions, maybe even raises some questions, and you can bring any of these questions down in the comments below. I answer every comment on this channel, or find our Discord link in the video description and join us on Discord, because I'm not always there to answer every question, but you can tag me in Discord, and if I don't answer it, somebody definitely will and help you get on the right direction. As always, thank you so much for watching, and if you didn't check out last week's video where we talk about the Death Company and just see how strong they are against both the Sanctuary Guard and the Vanguard veterans after the chapter approved release, then I think you should totally watch it now, and I will catch you in the next video. By the blood are we made, brothers. Peace.